A heart-wrenching silence, like a thunderclap, I learned of the betrayal. My name was Monica, and the news hit me with such force that I could barely get out of bed. I was a middle-aged woman who had lost everything. After more than 20 years of living together with Michael, who had been not only my husband but also my best support during those years, I found myself in an abyss of despair. His infidelity pierced me like a sharpened knife, tearing apart everything I had ever known about love and trust. Every moment spent in the same apartment where we'd built our dreams reminded me that I'd been betrayed. Not only had I lost the man I loved, but I had lost everything: faith, dreams, and meaning. The only thing that mattered to me was my daughter Ani. She is the only grip on reality I have left. After a few bleak months where every day was like the previous one, Ani invited me to live with her. At that moment, I realized I couldn't stay with Michael. I agreed, hoping the change of scenery would help me recover, at least partially. But there was still a sense of loss inside of me. When I moved in with Ani and her husband Jake, I was full of uncertainty. It wasn't easy for my daughter, and all the time I felt like I was a foreign body in their happiness. Jake, who was polite and friendly, I sometimes saw something in his eyes that resembled resentment, as if he hated me for being a source of trouble for his wife. For the first time, I tried to avoid conflict by sitting quietly in the corner, watching them interact. Instead of feeling part of the family, I became more and more of a shadow. Every morning began with uncertainty, and I tried not to draw attention to myself. But each time Jake unwittingly pointed out how his life had changed with my arrival, my inner demons only grew stronger. One night, when Ani had left for an important meeting and I was left in the kitchen making dinner, Jake walked into the room. He looked tired, his eyes full of fatigue and frustration. At that moment, something touched the depths of my heart. Perhaps it was the unity in pain that binds people together. "You look tired, Monica," he said with a disgruntled tone, as if I had taken something priceless from him. I felt a wave of shame and rage wash over me. All that muffled resentment washed over me like an intruder. I nodded, trying to stay calm, though a storm of emotions raged inside me. The days grew heavy, and I spent every evening in my own tears. I thought I was finding comfort in solitude, until I felt Jake enter the room again, his dark eyes watching me intently. He didn't realize that at that moment an invisible bond had formed, connecting our pain. Something in his gaze changed, and suddenly I wanted to break that barrier between us. We started talking, and gradually the conversations became easy, filled with understanding. Jake no longer looked at me with hatred, and I began to see a spark of sympathy in his eyes. This became difficult for me, because I knew he was Annie's husband, and somewhere in the back of my mind I continued to fear her reaction. We both hid our true feelings behind masks of tolerance. One day, when evening came and Annie wasn't home again, a conversation between us about the complexity of the experience came up. Jake said he felt exhausted, not just from work, but from what was going on in the family. I struggled to find the words to support him, but I knew there was an incredible need inside him to be heard. Our gazes met, and at the very moment when the air around us became unrealistically heavy, betrayed by that slight spark, his hand gently touched mine. That moment made me realize that there was something more between us: understanding, empathy, and maybe even attraction. When our lips met, the world around us disappeared, leaving only us. It was more than a kiss, it was the comfort that comes from a deep understanding of the same pain. I couldn't believe that as I walked through the chaos, I was finding someone who could be a reflection of my own experiences. It was a mistake, but I couldn't stop anymore. I knew now that Jake and I were covered by this invisible thread that connected us on a level of feelings and emotions. My heart's ears were open, but I still had fears about what Ani would say. This secret romance growing between us was weighing on my shoulders like a weight that was hard for me to carry. But in these moments when we were together, I felt alive again. Despite all the feelings we had for each other, something inside me whispered that the real drama was just beginning. I realized that this comfort I so desperately needed was the beginning of something dangerous. But I was ready to sink into that state. later, when the time was right, having experienced everything that would happen. With each new day, our interaction became more and more meaningful. It wasn't just a physical connection, but a deep understanding, two people who, after losing everything, were able to create new meaning. Now I had to decide what price I was willing to pay for this new beginning. When Jake pressed me against the wall, the moment seemed to slow down, and everything around us disappeared. I felt my heartbeat so hard it felt like it wanted to burst out of my chest. His eyes burned with passion, and despite the fear that whimpered somewhere deep inside, I couldn't resist. He wrapped his strong arms around me, and I was lost in the full grip of the moment. The rays of the setting sun were streaming through the window in thin golden threads, illuminating our bodies. I could feel the warmth shining down on us, as if nature itself approved of what was happening. Each ray touching us seemed like a healing touch, giving us strength to go on. Jake leaned closer and touched his lips to my temple, and goosebumps ran down my skin. It was so tender and reverent that I couldn't hold back a sigh. Then, abruptly, he pulled me against the wall, and I felt his warmth encompass me, his hand on my waist and his other arm around my neck. He looked into my eyes, as if searching them for confirmation that I was ready for this step. "Monica," he said softly, and the sound of his voice sent me deeper into my senses. This moment tested my loyalty and openness. I couldn't believe that my life could now move to a whole new level, so far removed from the pain I'd felt before. I responded to his tenderness, pressing closer, encircling him with my arms. He pressed me harder against the wall, and I felt his body pressed against mine, the air between us full of anticipation. Our lips met, and that kiss transformed everything. It was full of desire and passion, as if we were trying to forget all the torment of the past. I felt every cell in my body fill with life, as if I had awakened from a long sleep. The light streaming through the windows formed our silhouettes, giving this moment an air of unreality. It felt like we were alone in the world and our happiness could not be touched by anyone. We were like two ships that, for one moment, could find each other in the vast ocean of feelings. Jake, sensing my answering passion, took me in his arms, and it was so unexpected that I couldn't contain my laughter. I felt as light as a feather, and that togetherness made us even closer. He wouldn't let go of me, and I knew this moment would remain in our memories forever. Backlit by golden light, we twirled in a dance, and I felt as if the world had finally found harmony. I closed my eyes, letting myself drown in the sensations, warm, tender, full of sincere feelings. That moment was incredible and full of significance. I realized that we were together, and in that togetherness was a tremendous strength. Everything that had happened seemed unimportant compared to what could happen. Jake and I had begun a journey to reclaim ourselves, and in that sincerity, I felt that perhaps together we could create a new reality. And so, under the light of the sunset, surrounded by flickering light, we left behind everything that had ever weighed us down, opening the door to a new life full of dreams, love, and hope.